To America's Radio Newsline, standing by, Congresswoman Nan Hayworth, Republican, who represents the 19th District in the great state of New York. Congresswoman, welcome back to America's Radio News.
Glad to be with you, Chris.
Let's talk about the jobs numbers that came out last week. One of the interesting headlines being released today, as folks are digging deep down into these numbers, is that Latinos have been hit incredibly hard by this, jumping from 10.3% in April to 11% unemployment in May. It doesn't get a lot of press among certain quarters, but we've been covering it here on America's Radio News. What in your mind do you think the Republican Party needs to do to reach out to the Latino vote, to basically talk their language, basically, and to see what their issues are in this upcoming campaign?
Well, it's so important, Chris, because the United States, our country, has been the destination for immigrants from all over the world for a couple of centuries now, because we have offered opportunity to everyone and the dignity of having a job and a way of not only supporting yourself, but supporting your family, building your community. Yeah. My own mother is an immigrant herself, so I'm a first-generation American. I know how important it is that we have an economy that works, and that is the number one thing that our federal government should be doing, is providing that opportunity to thrive to everyone who comes to this country. Certainly for Latinos, that's a huge issue.
There's a guy I know you know very well, senior Obama campaign advisor David Axelrod, raising some eyebrows around the country and around Capitol Hill with a statement he made on Univision. I'm going to play it for you and get you to react. Here he is.
I think it would be an insult to the Hispanic community to choose Senator Rubio if he thinks that is somehow, if Governor Romney thinks that's sort of a get-out-of-jail-free card for all of the things and the positions that he's taken.
An insult to the Latino community if Governor Romney were to choose Senator Rubio as a vice presidential candidate?
Well, that statement, like so many others, unfortunately, that Mr. Axelrod has made, simply defies common sense, Chris, as we all know. Senator Rubio is a shining example of accomplishment, and not only because he has Hispanic roots, but because he represents the promise of this country, that people with initiative and energy and talent can soar as high as their work and dedication will take them. And that's the tragedy of this economy, is that we have a federal government under this administration that is actually literally standing in the way of jobs and opportunity, because it is taking so much from the American people that should be going into our small businesses especially and into our communities. It should be staying with our hardworking taxpayers instead of being taken by the federal government. It's a disgrace. Record-breaking stimulus, over $1 trillion worth of so-called stimulus spending has only resulted in a record number of Americans at the poverty level. It is a disgrace, and it does not need to be that way, and we can change it.
Our guest is Congresswoman Nan Hayworth. She's a Republican who represents the 19th District up there in the great state of New York. Republicans have been very vocal about their criticism of President Obama. Mr. Obama has been critical of the Ryan budget, while his own budget offerings have not received one vote in the U.S. Congress the last 3 times they've been brought up in either house. He has said the wealthy are not paying their fair share in this country, but he's not informed us of what he believes that fair share is, nor has he actually put out a plan to reform our tax code to make sure that it's more fair. And he blames consistently America's economic woes on the headwinds we're getting from Europe. All of that being said, the GOP is also culpable in this, calling Obamacare the worst thing to hit since the Depression, basically, back there in the 20s. But they have not offered an alternative to the country to look at and say, here's what we're proposing. Do you think that's a bit? Do you think that's a bit of a problem for the GOP?
Well, it's an opportunity for us, Chris, and that's the key. We know that we need to do our healthcare system. We need to make our healthcare system far more accessible to all Americans. There have been millions of Americans who have had a much harder time than they should to have good, affordable health insurance and health care, and we can do better. The law that was passed in 2010 is enormously costly. It's imposing $1 trillion bureaucracy on our country that we simply don't need and should not have. It actually diverts all that money away from where it should be, which is in health care, including Medicare. $500 billion from Medicare. That is simply unsustainable. Can't be done. A better plan would be 4 points. Someone like me would say this. I'm not speaking officially on behalf of our party, but I think you find broad support for these points because many of us Republicans have talked about them. Let's open up insurance across state lines so that small businesses and individuals can buy from anywhere in the country instead of having a very limited selection state by state. Let's make health savings accounts far easier for people to fund. Let's help those who need help the most. In the state of Indiana, that's exactly what they did with health savings accounts, and it worked out very well so far. Let's have real liability reform so that we are not diverting billions of dollars away from care toward jackpot justice. And let's be sure that we can use the dollars that we do need to help those who would have the hardest time finding insurance because of pre-existing conditions. Let's make sure that we can provide them the help that they need state by state with what are called high-risk pools.
All right,
Chris, we can do that.
Okay, let's turn your attention back to your home state. And I got about 30 seconds here, but Mayor Michael Bloomberg, the banning of the big gulp, and then coming out a couple of days later and saying, we want to decriminalize some marijuana use.
Yeah.
Go ahead, just give me your comments.
Well, I think a lot of folks have commented, especially over the past few days, about the big sugary soft drink issue because there is a real nanny state question involved in that. People need to have respect for their own personal choices, and just because those things are available doesn't mean that everybody's going off the rails in terms of their diet. So I think there are a lot of questions about how we respect individual liberty when we impose those sorts of rules. There's no question about it.
Congresswoman Nan Hayworth, always a pleasure. Republican who represents the 19th District up there in the great state of New York. We'll talk.